Welcome back to, and thanks so much for joining us this week here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys formula and America's Medicare Associates with Nolan Baker and Dave Ross. 419-794-3030 is the phone number, and the website is arhq.com. As I mentioned earlier, if you missed portions of the show, you want to catch up, check out previous editions. America's Retirement Headquarters available for you on demand, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you consume your podcasts. Also YouTube. Just search for America's Retirement Headquarters, and it is there for you to check out at your leisure. Now, despite all the different factors going on in the world, the stock market continues to dance with record highs. But RFD TV's Scott Shalady thinks there is a disconnect between the market and the rest of the economy. He tells Fox Business he thinks a correction, well, it's coming.
The last time we got interest rates really low, we pushed savers and retirees into the stock market, and they benefited from that because we saw a big run up in stocks over the last 15 years. But now that we're at all-time highs and we start cutting rates, where are these retirees to go? I mean, are we expecting to continue with all-time record highs going higher? When's the last time we had the economy at record highs and the stock market at record lows? I don't think that's ever really happened. So it's only really happening one way, that we're actually cutting rates with stocks at all-time highs. So you can't tell me that things are fantastic and then we have to go cut rates. Something's got to give, baby, as they say.
So what are you telling clients that have enjoyed the market highs? Is it time now to try and perhaps safeguard retirement portfolios from this volatility?
Well, I would say, speaking of dancing with record highs, we just recently had our economic summit at the Hilton Garden Inn, and it is one of our most popular events because we're talking about the state of the economy, recapping the markets year to date, and giving our outlook on the future. And we had dueling pianos was our entertainment, and absolutely a fantastic job that they did. Scott, who is busy working with Medicare and helping everybody out, got a night off where he got to dance a little bit on the dueling pianos. It was a great event as well. But, one of the things that we did talk about that event is we talked about, is it time to try and safeguard your retirement portfolios? And, you can go back and forth and kind of look at this in different perspectives. Number one is, I talked at the event about it depends upon where your time frame is in life. My son who works here, he's in our 401k, he's in his 20s. Whether the market goes up or down next year has really little to no impact on his 401k. If anything, should sock as much away in the tax-free 401k as possible and build up that money, because when he gets to retirement, that's when he's going to need it. But for those folks that are close to or in retirement time, what happens in the market in the near term can have a pretty big impact one way or another. Now, the positive is we've got back-to-back years in a row that the stock market has posted double-digit returns. So, for a lot of investors, it's given them a little bit of a breathing room. It's given them some nice growth in the portfolio. And if we use history as a guideline, there's been multiple other scenarios where you've seen the market have more than 2 years in a row of positive gains. So using history as a guideline, it would say that there, can be more positives coming up in the future. The other thing is if you look at the history of what happens in the market when the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, it kind of breaks into two categories. First, you have a interest rate cut that's due to a result of a crisis. So in 2008 or in 2000, when we had a crisis happening in the economy and the Federal Reserve was cutting interest rates, you historically saw a lot of volatility and a continued shock to the market. In this environment, what we see right now is that the government is being proactive of cutting interest rates, which, would be a positive in many situations for companies, especially that are using debt, like growth-oriented type companies. You also, I think, have to be careful about what sectors that you own in this type of environment as well, with markets at record high. If we do go into a recession, things like utilities, consumer staples, those categories could be more resilient than, areas that oftentimes involve discretionary spending. Leisure, I could cut out my trip if times are tough next year, but I'm not going to stop going and getting groceries at the grocery store as a good example. In general, if we think about investing, though, you think of buy low, sell high. History would say that the markets are at record high. So knowing what steps are going to be taken in your portfolio to safeguard it is extremely important, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to fall into that situation where you're that emotional investor and you're feeling euphoric, you're feeling like everything's great, things are going to keep going up all the time, and then all of a sudden a shock to the system happens. And I can pretty much guarantee that's probably what's going to change, is an unexpected shock to the system. And then the markets react negatively. And then after the markets react negatively, then you make the change to the portfolio. That is a bad investment strategy. You want to avoid that. So what you want to do is you want to consider incorporating what I would refer to as a downside risk management system in place. And a downside risk management system can be a lot of different things, and we can explain to you in terms that you can incorporate into your portfolio. A couple of ideas is, one is you could take some of the chips off your table, if you will. The first time I ever took my wife to Las Vegas, I remember the trip really well. We were young and broke and didn't have a little bit of money, but we had a little bit to have some fun while we were in Las Vegas, the first time for us there together. And I was showing her craps, and it didn't matter what she did. The dice were hot. She was rolling and making money. And, when she built up chips and she got her stack a little bit high, when we got to a certain point, in fact, we wanted to go to like a show and go see one of the shows or have a nice dinner. So when we had enough money and had enough profits, she would take that money off the table and put it in her pocket. And then that ensured that we locked in that gain so we could go have a nice dinner. We saw some great shows. And so think about that concept and applying it to your situation. If you've had significant growth in your equities, it's never a bad idea, I think, to lock in some profits and just lock in, where you're at as well. The other thing is investors sometimes will try to get in and out of the market. I met this gentleman. He came to a seminar about 2 years ago. He never became a client of the firm, but he came in for that first appointment meeting. And what he shared with me is, 2 years ago, he got out of the stock market, went all into a cash position because he didn't like the current administration, was going to wait it out until the elections were over. And what happened is, the reality is he just missed out on 2 years of double-digit back-to-back growth and locked in interest rates at 2 years ago, which was quite a bit lower time than they are today. So going in and out of the market, you've got to get it right twice. You've got to figure out when to get out and then when to get in. And that can be an emotional, draining battle for most investors responding to market conditions. There are some things. We had 2 guest speakers that were at the event that talked about some of the downside risk management that we use here at America's Retirement Headquarters. So we can incorporate what I would refer to as a gas pedal in your portfolio, meaning that we're going to be more adaptive to market conditions. So as conditions deteriorate, we help you develop a strategy that allows you to slow down. In the perfect world, what we do for folks is we build an all-weather portfolio. That way your investments aren't left out in the wilderness to figure out what the weather is like. We figure out what's the right temperature for you. We bring you inside and we build out this plan called the independent income system that's designed to weather whatever environment that comes. But in general, again, with the markets at record high, now is the time to run the fire safety drill. Think about in COVID. Think about in 2008. Think about, 3 years ago, or when we had the last downturn in the market. With the current strategy that you're in, were they proactive to help you try to limit losses, or were they responsive, or were you responsive after something bad happened? Because you want to be proactive in this environment right now while markets are at record highs, taking steps to know what your downside risk management program is before something bad happens.
Not to oversimplify this topic, but when I heard what Scott Shellady had to say, there's always a correction coming. We haven't had a correction in a while, but there is always a correction coming. So what do? You prepare to make the appropriate moves at the appropriate time so that the impact of the correction is not going to destroy the value of your portfolio. I also happen to read a lot of Warren Buffett, and he made the quote, "Be fearful when others are greedy, and be greedy when others are fearful." So when people feel that any investment they make is going to go straight up, and believe it or not, that was the tech bubble of 2000. If you think everything's going to go up, and no matter what you buy, then that's the time to really start thinking about what is the best course of action. If you had cash to play with when the COVID correction happened in early 2020, if you had cash money to invest by April of 2020, you did quite well, because the investment landscape across the board performed very, very well once the bottom got priced in. So here at America's Retirement Headquarters, we're not going to talk to you about when do you put the gas pedal down, when do you sell out and go to cash, but we're going to be faithful stewards of your money, and we're going to manage it to meet your goals and objectives, and it will give you a lot of peace of mind knowing that you've got seasoned, highly trained, competent professionals looking at your situation and making recommendations that are in your best interest.
You know, Dave, you mentioned the tech bubble, and I can't remember. That ended well for everybody, right? There were no repercussions on that. No, it's quite the contrary. You know, there are going to be market downturns over the course of your retirement. We're talking a 30-year retirement. Of course, you're going to see fluctuations in there. What you want to do, what you don't want to do, actually, is respond emotionally and make knee-jerk reactions to those. Having a consistent plan in place, that is something, you know, not quite like the Vegas model that Nolan was talking about earlier, because what's true about Vegas? Well, the house always wins. You don't want to do that. You want to find those opportunities when there are threats and be wary of the threats when there are potential opportunities. It's what the team at America's Retirement Headquarters does day in and day out with all their clients, and they can help you out. That all you need to do to get started is give a call, 419-794-3030 to set up a time, or go to the website, arhq.com.